We should play a game that's what interruptions will happen next video. Is it gonna be my camera shutting off? Is it gonna be focus issues? Is it gonna be battery life? Is it gonna be the light on a timer turning off? And I don't know how to turn the timer off.
Hey, I think this is where I'm looking. I am out and about. It is, I don't know, almost midnight. So I am in a plaza. I have been kind of talking to myself quite a bit while I drive, kind of thinking and trying to figure out. You can see where I'm at right now. I'm in front of a fountain. But it's been a lot of thought, and it's been a lot of reflection, and it's been a lot of I don't know. I keep saying the same things over and over and over again, but it's like the next step, the next stage, I think is like the best way to describe it. In my video a couple weeks ago, I talked about how a friend from high school came to visit me. Hadn't seen him in literally a decade. And one of the things that we talked about off camera for his podcast was names. I knew him by a nickname from high school, and so when he was coming to visit, I introduced him, like I kind of preemptively gave my partner a heads up and said like, hey, so-and-so is coming, like, is it okay if they stay the night? And so giving my partner some pretense into kind of the state of this individual, I had kind of given my partner his name ahead of time. And when he arrived, the very first thing he did walking through the door was he introduced himself. He stuck his hand out, shook my partner's hand and said, hello, I'm, so-and-so, and this is the name that I'm going with. And he used his full name. And so that started the conversation, because I never call him by his full name. I always called him by his nickname, but it started the conversation of, what do you prefer to go by? Because if there's one thing that I fully believe, it's the power of names, and it's the importance of names, and it's the importance of pronouncing the names correctly and giving the honor to the person and the name that they were either born with or that they choose to go by. We had an open discussion, and he was like, well, as someone who knew me as a kid, like, you know me as, my nickname, but as an adult, I choose to go by my full name. And I totally get that, because like in all of my official emails and all of my official correspondence and in everything professional that I try to do, I always use my full name. It's very respectfully signed Andrea Wyant. It's always my full name. There's something about a full name that has more power into it. It's different than Andy. Andy's the abbreviation. It's short. Andrea is, to me, much more powerful. And so, kind of going back into the story, so we got to talking, and he was like, yeah, I go by my full name. I guess I ought to ask you, why all of a sudden your Facebook changed, now you go by Andy. That's something that, we need to have a conversation on. And we kind of did briefly, but it wasn't super long or anything. And I kind of wanted to take this video to elaborate on it. So I had the perfect setup, and of course, the way things always work, my phone storage ran out. So literally, my phone shut off on the other side of town, and like the whole thing was just spazzing out. So I had to come home. It's like 1:30, almost 2 o'clock in the morning right now. I did a data transfer and dumped everything from the DCIM folder on my cell phone onto a hard drive, and then just wiped everything clean. So I just freed up about 50% of the storage space on my phone, so hopefully that won't be an issue anymore. Problem now, though. So I lit a fire back here because, one, I finally have the fire pit set up after, owning it for like a year. I know you can't see me. We'll try this again later. But here's the moon. Okay. So I have to get my mind kind of back into this, like, especially sitting out by the fire, like I just did nothing but go down the rabbit hole of like, what am I doing with my life, which is not what I need to be doing. As I was saying,
Names are important. Names are an identity. Names. The best example that I can give, and a reoccurring example that I regularly see, is especially with people, and I don't even want to say people my age, but I saw this with like high school foreign exchange students, and then foreign exchange students in college, and then now I work for a tech giant that brings engineers and brilliant minds from all across the world to work in one single place. And it's all about, for them, making the biggest difference. And so like a lot of the engineers that I talk to that are originally foreign, they either went to school in England somewhere, or like Canada somewhere, or even somewhere in the United States. And when they went to college, they were given an American name. And I guess maybe American's not the right word for it. They were given an English name. And so whatever their birth given name was, it's been replaced with Kevin, or it's been replaced with Sue, or Ashley. Haranga. But they replace them with American names. And if whoever is coming here finds it bashful, or finds their name too hard to pronounce, or if they're just trying to get by in a certain sense of the term, then like, okay, like I can kind of get it, kind of not, kind of get it. Like, my nickname is Andy and I go by Andy. And I will still go by Andy, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But for someone else to assign that to you, like when you come in, when you're brought to a university, for all of a sudden, whoever your teacher is or whoever your employer is, to all of a sudden just say like, no, you're going to go by this name now. I don't care what your birth given name is. This is what you're going to go by. Like, the history of name replacements aside, that doesn't sit well, period. Like, that's not something that we should be doing. That's not something that is okay. And that's something that I don't agree with. So for me specifically, me in particular, I am very conscious, and I try to be conscious, of pronouncing names correctly, of pronouncing full names or preferred names. Now, there are abbreviations, I get that. There are nicknames. There are ways of saying your name in a more convenient way, not only for you, but for the person that's trying to pronounce it. Like, I get it. That is completely in the eye of the beholder. In terms of that is completely up to the person whose name is being replaced. I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole on this one. I don't want to go too far on a tangent from what the purpose of this video is. But in a sense as well, this is also the purpose of this video. Because if you have a name that is culturally unique, if you have a name that, say you're leaving your home country, or say that it is still your home country, but it's not the predominant culture in that country, don't settle for someone mispronouncing your name. Don't settle for a nickname if that is not what you want. If that is not a nickname that is okay with you, if it's not a nickname that either you've given yourself or that your family has given you in a sense of respect, and it's just a cop-out in a way, like that's not okay. And so part of this video is exactly that, because what I find is you're traditionally, I don't want to make this a video about race, but in a way it is about race, and we'll get to that. But traditionally, white names don't get replaced. It's anything that is culturally distinct, that is uncomfortable for a different culture to say, that is uncomfortable for standard English pronunciation to say. And I know that this is a hot topic. I know that this is It's respect, is what it is. And we should not settle for calling Hermans German. Like, at least attempt. Like, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but at least make an attempt. Like, with names being an identity, with names being who you are and the power that you bear, why would you want to cut that short? Why would you want to change that? Why would you want to belittle you? That being said, going from Andrea to Andy at the time of my life that I did was 100% a power move. At the age of 5-6 years old, I was conscious of masculine and feminine. I was conscious not necessarily of what that meant, but I was conscious of not wanting to be perceived as weak. So kind of going on what I was talking about before in terms of trying to be perceived as more manly. It's not that I wanted to be perceived as a man. I definitely still wanted to keep my specific gender identity because I did value the fact that that is what I brought to the table, but I didn't want it to be perceived as I am a woman bringing that to the table. I didn't want to be separated because of my gender. And so from a very young age, I didn't know 5-6 years old that that's what I was doing. But 5-6 years old, I knew that there was a difference. I knew that there was a difference between Andy and Andrea. I knew that there was a difference between a boy saying something and me saying something. And part of that is I was hyper aware, more so than I would say even my peers, because of cultural upbringing. My mom is an immigrant from South Korea, and she immigrated to the United States at a time where there was definitely a stronger sense of sexism than there is now. That's a whole nother conversation. There's a lot of movement towards bridging that gap and towards trying to make things a little more just for women. But my mom rebelled against that. And because of that, whether she meant to or not, she made me hyper aware of that gap. I don't think there's any other way to say it. Her pushing for her to have a seat at the table that was equal to anyone else in the room, whether they were a man or a woman, ultimately imparted that upon me before I even knew what that meant. And so bringing that forward into my adult life, at 18 years old, I took on Andy. I took on Andy instead of Andrea. And it wasn't because of the cultural undertones to Andy. It wasn't because my mom called me Andy because it fit with the Korean language. It wasn't because of any of that. It was because Andy is short for Andrew. Andrew is very similar to Andrea. I'm taking Andy. And walking into a room with Andrews who go by Andy, you're going to call me Andy too. Like, I don't care what your friends call you. I don't care from the first Andrea that you've ever heard of go by Andy. You're going to call me Andy. And carrying that, it's gotten to a point now for my own personal realization of why I've leaned so heavily on being called Andy. Part of it is the identity. Part of it is, especially in a role. If you're new to this channel, hi. In all of my adult life, I've worked in male-dominated careers. I went from the military to industrial manufacturing. I went into engineering. I have been, when I first started my degree, I was one of 2 females in the entire department. Like, I have been in male-dominated roles for all of my adult life, and I really think subconsciously that's why I clung to Andy, was because at the academy, like, I wanted to be viewed in a more bro light. I wanted to be viewed as equal. And it's to the point now, not only has names been an important part of identification, specifically for others to me or for me to others, but I've always struggled in making names. So, naming my pup, I had my pup for weeks, almost a month before I finally gave him. He almost got named Squid. So, when it comes to turning strawberry, when it comes to my relationship with this business that I tried creating, is it really even a business, or is it just like a personal thing? Because it's definitely a personal thing that I try to like talk up, but it's me. Like the whole platform, the whole everything was built off of me. And so turning strawberry, I've talked about it in previous videos. It's on my blog if you want to understand where turning strawberry even came from. That in itself was kind of a weird name because it was very feminine. And so, like I guess almost 3 at this point, I was slightly uncomfortable. I didn't like it because of the feminine undertones that turning strawberry carried. I didn't like it. I wanted something darker, deeper, more masculine. And that's been a hang-up for me. That has always been a hang-up. I specifically remember at like 6, 7 years old, maybe even younger, specifically sitting in a certain location in our old house that I grew up in, staring at this like seafoam green color on the wall that we had just painted the bathroom, and thinking, at the time, pink was my favorite color. My childhood bedroom, the trim, the carpet, like the walls were like this beautiful white with like, it was a white wallpaper with flowers and like silver specks, but my trim, my ceiling, my carpet was all different varying shades of pink. And I remember specifically deciding in that moment, I'm not going to like pink anymore because pink is too girly.
I think pink is the perfect color for being feminine and being girly and fabulous. When I think of Paris Hilton, I think pink.
Like, I just remember sitting there going through the colors. And that's why even to this day, if you ask me what my favorite color is, I usually pick neutrals. Black, white, silver. In today's climate, in this stage that I'm in my own life right now, that's the biggest thing. It's really at a crossroads. I'm at a crossroads right now between what I thought at 18, 19, 20, even 21 years old, what I thought I wanted and what I thought I wanted to do in life. And I'm realizing now that I'm not that age, that I've spent time in this field, that I've spent time wearing this suit, wearing this hat, playing these games. I've spent time realizing, and a lot of this I attribute it to, to kind of tie it all back to like, turning strawberry and, masculine and feminine energies and yoga and the realization of both. Like, it really is an entirely new chapter. It is becoming comfortable with the fact that I am a woman. I don't know. This is going to be quite long. I'm already at like 37 minutes right now recording just this clip. So I'm going to wrap it up. In conclusion, some of the final, like, what was the point of this? Names are important. Honor your name. Don't let anyone shortchange you on your name. Especially if it's not something you're okay with. Especially if it's like someone who's just meeting you and they just can't pronounce your name and they're just like, oh, I'm going to call you this instead. No. Like, stop that shit. Correct them. Say, no, this is my name. You can call me this, or you can just not talk to me. Like, sorry, not sorry. As a collective, we need to make a better effort. And that's not just in the United States. Like I said, many of the individuals who I work with right now that are from different countries with far more complex names, and they go by like Kevin or Michael. No, just no. Like, they were given those names in different countries, and they just kept them when they came to the United States because they were like, the United States speaks English too. Like, we'll just keep our English names. Like, that's not okay. It's not okay. For me, Andrea is my name. I know why I was named the name that I was named. I've had that conversation with my parents. I am proud of my name. I don't think Elizabeth would have suited me. But I know not necessarily who I was named after, but where the legacy of my name came from. And I'm proud of that. And I honor that. In terms of Andy, for me at this point in my life, that is, half of my life has been lived as Andy. And that is self-exploration and me figuring out my comfort levels between my masculine and my feminine. Because I have always been more comfortable with the masculine. So for me, it's finding comfort in my feminine. It's finding comfort and it's finding ease at wearing my hair down, wearing makeup. Things that I never was okay with before because that's girly. Because it just gets in the way. Because why would you do that? There's still a lot of room to grow. There's still a lot of things that I am uncomfortable with that I have to kind of second guess myself and think, why do I have such an aversion to leggings? There's a whole level of power that is still untapped for me, and that is the next level that I am trying to get into, is being comfortable and finding my place in that. That being said, there's also a lot of self-exploration that I need to do. I think that about wraps this video up. It's getting really late. I'm sorry if this dragged on. I know I said I would stop apologizing for stuff like this, but it's also like 3-something in the morning and I'm at like 44 minutes. So, yeah. Third filming location, and we're finally here to finish this video. So, I guess this is set up in a decent enough way that like I could do one of the YouTuber things and say like, if you want to watch my last video, click here. And if you want to subscribe, click here. Because you know you want to subscribe. I don't know. Is this even an option? Can I like, I think I can move them here. Yeah, right? Subscribe. No. Click next video, subscribe. Yeah. All right. Bye.